GPU scalpers are still trying to sell the RTX 4080, even though nobody really wants to buy it. Look at this guy here, $1,850 for a Strix, and you can tell he has two of them, so you know it's going to be a GPU scalper. Now, I was surprised to see all of these Strix sell out at my local micro centers because $1,549 for a 4080 is the most expensive one that you can get retail. That's going to be in the US. I know some of my viewers in different countries actually post that the scalper prices in the US seem like a bargain because their pricing is much more expensive, and we're not even talking about their scalper pricing. Their retail pricing is more expensive than the US sort of scalper pricing. So that's very, very interesting. I've heard this several times. But anyway, going back, I've seen these sell out at local micro centers, and I was like, that's the first 4080 that sells out. This is really, really funny because it's the last one you would think anybody would buy. This at $1,549 is simply $50 below an RTX 4090. And then at first I thought, well, maybe people can't find the 4090. It has definitely been out of stock, and scalped versions are even more expensive than this. Is that why they're buying this most expensive Strix? I know the Asus has a lot of appeal to a lot of people, but it's $350 more than a base 4080 for basically very, very minimal performance gain over even the most base 4080 that you can find. So my question is sort of answered by seeing the amount of these Strix GPUs that are actually being scalped. Now, why are they doing this? Well, simply all of the other Strix GPUs were extremely popular last generation and for the 4090. The 4090 Strix at $1999 also was the first one to sell when it came in stock. That's because it maintains the easier resellability for scalpers. They can sell it at the highest prices to unsuspecting users, or I should say suspecting users that will pay those much higher premiums, well over $2,000 for a scalped version of that 4090, and thus some of that hype translates over to the 4080. Now, obviously, Asus feels that people will pay over the base MSRP for the Strix model. That's why they priced this at $1,549. They know that most people will pay for it. And now let's hear a word from our sponsor, VIP-CDKdeals.com, a Windows 10 Pro CD key. Add to cart, you put in code CC20. This will also work on Windows 11. You want to go into your settings in Windows, change and adjust your CD key, click activate, and now let's go back to the video. The really surprising thing here is that people are willing to pay even more because if there are scalpers selling it, you bet a couple people have sold it. I even messaged one guy in particular. He had a 4080 Strix, and of course I was kind of trolling him a little bit, and I played a little bit dumb, like I didn't really know too much about GPUs, and I was just kind of asking him some random questions. So I asked him, is this available? And he says, of course. I just like starting with those type of questions. And I said, is this a 4080 or a 4090? Sorry, I'm new to these GPUs, LOL, being a little bit funny there. And then he tells me it's a 4080, and then I just go straight into it. What's the best price that you can do on it? He tells me 4080 Asus ROG Strix, $1,750. Now the MSRP is about $1,549, and then you factor in tax and things like that. So you can see there isn't too much space for him to be scalping this GPU. At this price, he's basically just making very, very little amount for what could be a decent risk trying to sell to somebody you've never met before. So then I ask him just a basic question if the warranty transfers. He says it does, but something else interesting, he also says he has an MSI 4080 Gaming Trio X for a bit less. Then I ask, oh, how much is that one? Then he says about $1,550 on the MSI, which is still over $200 above its retail MSRP. So you can tell that this guy bought these GPUs to resell because he has two of them. Nobody in their right mind would buy two 4080s unless they were planning on making money on them. You can see here, after you figure the tax, the difference really isn't that big of what he's going to be making. Even if he bought it at a micro center and got 5% off, still doesn't leave very much on the table to go for a risk like this. The 4090, from what we've seen for these type of prices, has a much bigger margin for these scalpers, something that you can see them dropping their price day by day, pretty much making them sell for exactly what they bought it for, since nobody's going to bite at these much higher prices. Then of course I decide to pull my favorite line, and I tell him I want to SLI 2 together. I heard you can double the graphics. He kind of laughs it off and says I can't do that with the 40 series, and then kind of explains to me what SLI is and what it isn't. He even said you couldn't even do it with a 30 series besides a 3090 or 3090 Ti. Of course, all stuff that I know, but at this point I'm just having some fun with him. So I said, "Oh, but aren't they supposed to be the newest? My 1080 can do it, and I get double the graphics, and that's from like 2016. Then he says that's not how things work. Of course, I'm kind of being like very funny with him at this point, saying like, shouldn't these new GPUs have all the best stuff like SLI? Obviously, if a 1080 can do it, which is years and years old, something like this should be able to do it. Then I tell him it has a little computer thing that connects them. Trust me, it works. It's like a SLI ARM or something. I forget the name, SLI Highway. Oh yeah, SLI Bridge. So anyway, after kind of trolling him a little bit, and he tries to explain SLI to me, that was just having fun. He does say something else pretty interesting. I ask him, curious, have the 4080s been getting a lot of interest? I remember last year everything was so hard to find. And then he says, yes, he's already sold two 4080s since they just released. And judging by the fact he has another two 4080s here, I'm assuming he was able to get 4 total, showing you first it's pretty easy to get these GPUs, and secondly, sure, he did sell 2 of them, but it seems like the other 2 that he has were having to get reduced in terms of their price for them to even be considered. They seem to be staying a lot longer, and this was a little while back. As soon as they released is when he sold the first 2. Afterwards, when people saw that there wasn't really that much hype or demand, they saw that it's not really worth it to buy this 4080, and a lot of these scalpers are reducing their prices. Here is basically how this game works. A lot of these scalpers will live near a micro center if they don't get to jump on like a Newegg or Best Buy bot where they can get it immediately faster than other people. If they live near a micro center, often they can get a further like 5% off if they have like a micro center card, and they can go pick it up in person, and then they can turn around and online sell that GPU to somebody else who doesn't know about micro center or maybe lives too far from one, as people constantly remind me that not everybody has them in their state, of course. They can sell it to somebody else who can't get it online for a pretty big markup, therefore taking advantage of people who really don't have these local stores. So that's what a lot of other scalpers sort of admitted to me before, and it's really not the best situation to be in, both for the scalpers who are probably going to have to sell most of these GPUs, basically either return them to the store or sell them at a small loss or just break even with what they paid. These are not 4090s. The 4090s are much more in demand, and that market continues to be problematic on the secondhand market because people certainly are paying those amounts over the MSRP. But with the 4080, it has several issues. The price to performance is already really bad at $1,200. It's not a bad GPU by any means. It's the second best GPU out now, period. If you look at it from a performance standpoint, power draw and stuff like that is actually pretty impressive at a 320 watt TDP. Nothing wrong with the GPU. Some of them look great, like the 4080 Strix looks exactly like a 4090 Strix. So that's a positive right there. You're definitely paying for that type of quality, but you're also getting it for the most part. The problem is in the performance to the price that you're paying. People were expecting a $699 3080, which was extremely generous looking back now, and something like this at $1,200 definitely does not make sense at all. And of course, we have AMD's GPUs, the RDNA 3, coming out within a few short weeks, and that promises much better performance for the dollar. The highest end one being $999 for the reference one is already $200 cheaper, but it should have performance at least sort of equaling and maybe beating the 4080 in traditional rasterization. If you're gaming, it's going to be definitely something to look forward to. Of course, NVIDIA has its advantages with ray tracing, which AMD still is well improved. They definitely are not caught up yet with NVIDIA's ray tracing. And then with content creators and VR and things like that, NVIDIA definitely has its lead. It definitely has its place, but AMD is making it pretty attractive with their pricing. If they can keep third-party AIB pricing down, that's going to make their GPU very, very popular, because frankly, the 4080 isn't, and these scalpers not being able to sell them is definitely proof of that. And in fact, the next GPU to keep an eye on that may be heavily scalped like the 4090 will be the 7900 XTX and the XT. XT. That's something that if enthusiasts are really looking forward to, imagine the scalpers. They want to sell it to those enthusiasts. And as crypto mining kind of dropped off the face of the earth, those are going to be the only people left to buy them. There's a market in it in the 4090. The market's not there for the 4080, but will it be there for the AMD GPUs? I mean, AMD stuff has been scalped before, not to the same level as NVIDIA, of course, during the shortage, but people certainly have, and even the AIBs caught on to it and started selling these GPUs. Like the Power Color GPUs were really expensive for a 6900 XT compared to its original reference sort of MSRP that AMD gave. So let's see what happens. Remember to stay subscribed if you guys want to check out when those GPUs come out and how the market is doing in the real world market, not just the reviews and things like that, if you can buy it or not online. Those are going to be very important things to see how the GPU responds in a very live and ever-changing market. Changes almost every day. That's why I do these constant updates. All right, guys, so remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.